It's gonna be a big day. I don't know what episode that was from, but that was Negan. My best Negan. Imperfect. That was my imperfect Negan. I am excited about my imperfections. I wasn't always. Still don't like them, but they're relatable, That's what keeps us humble, and that's pretty important. That's going to be the whole theme of this episode is imperfections. We don't relate to perfection. We strive for it. We don't achieve it. We strive for it, but we definitely don't get there, and we don't relate to each other with that. So it's good that I still have lots of problems. I mean, I'm better than I was yesterday, kind of. I'm just focusing more on my lots of strengths that I have today, not my lots of problems. And one of my strengths today is that I'm starting to fall in love a little bit more with imperfection and the benefits that come out of that. So like I said, this is going to be the theme of this episode. It's been the theme this whole week, imperfection. So, and probably all life, right? So starting with imperfection, let's take a look at this imperfect icon I have up here. A collaborative piece that I made with my daughter way back when I first created the book that I've been talking about for a while here, A Successful Storyteller. I'm trying to remember, when we sat down, we do this all the time. Whenever I have an idea that I need some kind of artwork for, we'll sit down and pencil out a storyboard together, and we'll design. I'm using the word we very loosely here. She will design the storyboard while I act as a manager and just sit, micromanage. I sit around, I'm like, no, move this, no, move that. I think I need more of this, but I'm not sure what the this is. I hate myself for acting that way because I've had many managers over me telling me, I don't know what I want, but it's not what you did. Like, Can you give me some more direction so I don't have to keep making 10 iterations before you know? Well, I did that to her on this and on many others. And it's still amazing, though, because the feeling, besides the managerial part of collaborating with people that enjoy the process, that are actually in it together and are having fun, being creative and just seeing what happens, right? Where there's not a deadline, that's so hard not to have, but when you don't have a deadline and you're just playing and throwing things around and seeing what sticks, I live for those moments. And this was one of those moments. I mean, I got to her for the first chapter on this, and I told her, okay, so I'm looking for something that shows vision of why it's so important to share your imperfections. That was the title. That is the title of the first chapter. So share my imperfections. And how do we show that in such a way that we're giving vision into this idea? I want to show that it's broken. I want to show that you can see through this brokenness, but that there's this handicapped feeling about imperfection. It's hard to break through that and feel like it's good. How can we make that struggle apparent? Boom, an eyeball with a bunch of flowers all over it and cracks. And she put a sling, like one of those arm slings, or I think, around the eyeball. It's been a while since we've made this, so I'm trying to remember the thought process that went into that. But this was amazing. I'm probably going to wear this on a t-shirt one day, if she allows me. I still have to ask. But this eyeball was, and she put green in it because, got to take advantage of Dad's beautiful green eyeballs. I am a fan of my green eyeballs. It was one of the very few things I liked about myself when I was younger. Anyways, moving on. Let's talk about another imperfection here. Last time I told you the paperback had issues and Amazon was quick to tell me about this. And no, do it again, they said. Finally got these things figured out with the margins. And let me show you what it finally looks like because it's out there live now. I was so excited about just the verbiage at the beginning. And I did mention the swear word last time, so I'll read up until that point. Story time. Every time we heard those words, we felt an immediate rush of wonder, excitement, and possibility long before the story ever began. either told to sit quietly in a circle with our friends or lie quietly in bed with our stuffed animals, the storyteller would peel back the first magical page and we would fly our imagination kites, but quietly. Now you're an adult and the world fucking blows. What happened? All right, so there's so much about that as I hear, okay, so you see how insane I am right now. Because this has been something that's been brewing inside me for a long time. This passion about trying to make something worth enjoying in life that you don't have to worry about so many rules, right? So many constraints. Live inside the box. Think outside of the box. We pay you for that, but we need you to sit inside your cubicle. This mentality of constraints versus creativity. And one of these constraints, conceptually, is, swear words are wrong. Okay, and generally I agree we shouldn't be dropping a lot of F-bombs and all that stuff, but sometimes they're super effing important. And in this case, it really drew that line from child to adult. It's like, yes, how many times were we sold a bunch of BS that we really believed into, and we spent a lot of time in our life cultivating this lie and working our way up the ladder in whatever education or whatever job we had, trying to follow all of society's ideals, and ideals are good until they're not true. And then you wake up as an older person, you're like, wait a second, I'm all broken over all these things that never happened the way I was told. So it feels so good to have captured that sentiment on the back of the paperback. And here's a perfect moment that was caused by the imperfections I had earlier that delayed that paperback from going out to Amazon. I spent a lot of time going back and forth, as I said, on trying to figure out what was wrong with the margins. And it didn't get published at the same time as the ebook, which was, I think, around sometime November 28th or something like that. So like a week later, it finally does get published, the paperback. And then I look at the clock. I was like, wow, I published it on December 3rd. Why is that perfect? That's my wife's birthday. It's a small, perfect moment, but it made me smile. It was like, okay, thanks, Papa. That was a nice little bonus, just cool serendipity. I was excited by that. I didn't seek to publish on my wife's birthday, but it did feel like a nice win. So here's another couple of quick imperfect wins that happened. So, all right, ISBNs. All right, I didn't actually show you that, but I got the ISBNs figured out for both the ebook and the paperback. I'm going to go back to that paperback and show you. Check that out on the bottom corner. So that's an ISBN. You've seen those a lot. I've seen those a lot. Haven't really cared about it until I try to publish something of my own. There's something magical about seeing that barcode down there with my ISBN. That ISBN number has my publishing company embedded in it, and it's the mark of the beast. No, but it feels like, yeah, okay, cool, this is legit now, right? It's just, so that's one quick win. Another imperfect win was I kickstarted my first Amazon campaign as of today. We'll talk more about that next week because I don't know what the hell's going on. We'll find out after a week of it running. So I do want to jump into a couple of conversations I had this week, though. Some imperfect conversations. Those were pretty slick. And this actually came about initially because of the Amazon campaign that I kickstarted. One of the things I needed to figure out when I was doing that campaign, I'm just going to jump into that just very briefly, was the target audience copy. Copy meaning what is the actual piece of text that I'm going to try to advertise with. And I had broken my target audience up into several different groups of people, types of people that will be looking for a book on how to be a better storyteller in general and why they'd want that. And one of them happened to be actors. So I called an actor friend of mine to help me with the imperfect copy that I had. Congrats on the callback. Oh, that already sounds cringy. But I was going to originally say congrats on the callback. Now wow them with your authentic vulnerability by blah, blah, blah. I'm not gonna, the rest of it, I don't even remember what it was. I just kind of threw that up there because I erased that immediately after talking to this actor friend of mine who gave me some really good feedback. And this is one of the awesome benefits of sharing imperfections. I've mentioned this in the book. I've said this many times before. You get to share your journey with people, and it's not as lonely. You get to improve your craft quicker because you find out where your imperfections are when you share them. As scary as that is. And this actor friend was really quick to show me where my imperfections were. They look at that and they also cringe. They're like, the whole callback thing, that seems forced. I was like, yeah, I already know where you're going. They told me it just feels like the second sentence is somewhat okay, but that first sentence with the callback sounds like you're purposefully trying to use a spammy keyword. Oh, God, I felt like such a sleazy salesman when I heard this. And a huge part of me was like, I wanted to interrupt this person, be like, and defend myself. It's like, no. You asked for feedback. Shut up, Rene, and just listen. And they continued. They're like, yeah, it just sounds like you're really trying to force your way into my heart. Something along those lines. I was like, yeah, that's not good. No bueno. Don't want that. This is what happened afterwards. But actually, before I even go and show you what it turned into, what they told me, so I had to ask, what would be a good pain point to target for actors? Because I'm not an actor. I play one on YouTube, but I'm not a real actor. This person I was talking to was a bona fide actor. Been in some movies too. Imagine that. And they said, yeah, there's pain points across the board as it relates to feeling like you can't be free. There is this incessant feeling of worry as an actor that you're going to not portray what the casting director wants, not pick a smart role that shows your abilities compared to other people who are popular at the time. They rattled off a litany of things that related to not feeling like you could be free to be you when you're going out of your way to audition for some role. You can't be that kid that just imagines and plays and just sees what happens. And I was like, I was just talking about that earlier with you, right? So I can't believe that I didn't see this prior to calling this person, but they helped me see it. And so it eventually turned into this. Free to be you? ? And actually, it's a question because that's part of the feedback I got. Like, why don't you ask a question instead of just tell me something? I'm like, yeah, I know. Why did I not think about that again? They said, free to be you? Lose the social conditioning straitjacket by falling in love with both the beauty and brokenness of your unique life story. Well, that's not perfect. It's not. This whole thing is about imperfection, but it's better than the previous imperfection. And it's just really helpful when you don't assume you know things and go to the source of those who might know more than you and just be humble about it. And I'm much more excited about this than what I had earlier, for sure. I think back to the many times that things were perfect to be imperfect as a kid. And I'm not talking about when I was a kid. I'm talking about when I've been with adults, whether in the workplace, whether on stage, just some improv situation where I've not been attached to the result. I've just seen what happens. Like right now, the light went out, so now I'm darker. Hey, imperfect moment. And I just play with that and see what happens. And it's made a lot of awesome connections with people and conversations happen afterwards that wouldn't have been possible before. But it's harder and harder to be creative as an adult because we've been conditioned. That straitjacket conditioning comment that you read earlier, and NASA and other big companies like them have done huge studies on this. There's one specific one that I remember they were studying, a longitudinal study between 5-year-olds, which I think was the lower half or the minimum age, and then up to 35. They studied how creative these individuals were. And consistently across the board, they found that the 5-year-olds were always about 98% more creative than 35-year-olds. 98! And the reason wasn't because they were smarter. It's actually because they were less educated. That's the really scary thing. As we get older, as we get educated, we worry about the wrong answers more. And so we're less willing to just throw something at the wall and see what happens. We don't want to feel like a fool. We don't want to raise our hand when we don't know the freaking answer. So these 5-year-olds were consistently about 98% more creative than adults. My goodness. And this week, I had that second conversation with another friend about a very similar topic. I don't even know how it started, but we started talking about how the amount of information in the world is quite a bit right now. And let me just show you what we're talking about, our kids, and if it's going to be easier for them in the future. I was like, I really don't know about that. I'm just going to play this one for you. This is a snippet from our text message conversation.
Will our kids have a better and easier life? I wonder. Throughout the year of 2017 through 19, I believe it was 2 summers back to back, I traveled 6,000 miles and went to 7 NACA conferences. That's National Association for Campus Activities. And a lot of this had to do with meeting and greeting students and professors and advisors and all that stuff. And one of the things I kept running into was that students were extremely overwhelmed, just like I was back then, but from the perspective of way too much information. And a recurring theme I kept hearing, and this was mostly not from the students themselves, but from the teachers and the academic advisors who knew the students. They were saying things like, there has never been a time before now where everything happening on the planet was instantly available to you. And the amount of overwhelming data is so bad that it's getting harder to make good decisions and to know what to ignore. Everything's important, right? And there's not a lot of trial and error these days because you can look things up and instantly have an answer from Google or YouTube. And when every kid just whips their phone out of their pocket instead of being creative and just trying a what-if scenario and seeing what sticks, and the brainstorming process, there's no more brain. It's now, no, we've got the brain. It's online. We don't need to use ours.
So yeah, it's harder to be a kid and be creative when you just have Google and YouTube that gives you the right answers every time. Why use your own brain for that? And the irony about this for me is, even though I profess this is true, 18 jobs later, I had this, and I'll put a thumbnail to this here because I know I made a video about this a long time ago, but 18 jobs later, I had allowed every single company that I had worked for to use the very skills that I enjoyed using that I had discarded in favor of money because I didn't think mine were valuable. You know, script writing, the acting, the voiceovers, the creating weird inventions like with mobile apps and stuff like that. Mobile apps there's money there, but just the idea of creating something electronic without a real reason for it, you know? So that's a bunch of imperfection. I want to do a quick switch to a perfect Sunday that's coming up. This Sunday, there are going to be 2 simultaneous splashdowns that I'm super stoked about. I'll put the dates and links to this here in a bit, but December 11th at 11 a.m., Artemis 1, the Orion space capsule, I believe it's called, from NASA, is splashing down in the Atlantic or the Pacific, I forget, but it will be splashing down. This is something I've been waiting on for a long time as a kid. The adventure of space and going back to the moon and Mars and beyond. And we stopped that a long time ago. So this space capsule and this program is all about that. And then simultaneously, on that same day, a little later at 7 p.m., The Chosen, Season 3, 7 p.m. Now, some of you will know me enough to know that I used to belong to the Mars Society and the National Space Society way back in the day. And I walked with them up the Capitol steps to this, we called it a Moon-Mars Blitz on the Capitol in 2004 to try to keep them from defunding NASA's fiscal year budget for that year. It's a very small picture of me because it's a big group. And I was still overweight, like 210 pounds, all kinds of drugs still running through me. This is me with Mr. Zubrin, Dr. Robert Zubrin, one of the guys that's going to get us to Mars. This guy's insane with passion for Mars. And I had so many drugs coursing through my veins back then that honestly my memory of those events, it's not the best. What I do remember was just being scared out of my mind, trying to do something with a bunch of people who had their minds put together, but I still believed in space enough to push through the stress of being out of it socially. I believed in space enough. And that was, back in the day when I was in grade school and in high school, that was one of the only reasons I actually paid attention, was for that promise of space. Some of you will also know that I believe in Jesus. He's the only reason I actually pay attention in life, for his promise. But dropping that J-bomb can piss off some people, so I just want to send love, not piss. So for those of us that like piss, for those of us who have been waiting for a while, 7 p.m. this Sunday, The Chosen, Season 3. So 2 really cool things that I'm excited about. I want to end now with an imperfect request of you.